Alright, well, this is the third and final night of our pro-life apologetics course. The first time we talked about some of these foundational arguments about the identity of the baby and defending the humanity and the dignity of the baby. The second time we talked about some objections that might get raised and how to answer those and bring it back to the core issue, which is the humanity of the child. And today what we're going to be talking about is basic facts to remember. So why are we doing this? Well, pro-life discussions, it's one thing to know all the ethics and philosophy, but there are some things that you should be able to know off the top of your head when discussing these topics, so that you're not just caught flat-footed when someone asserts something to you that sounds a little weird, but you're not quite sure what to do with it. So tonight, the topics we're going to discuss are facts about the baby, facts about abortion, facts about abortion laws, and facts about Planned Parenthood specifically. So let's just dive right in. So let's talk about the baby. We're going to talk about some basic stuff you can find in any sort of biological textbook or anything like that. So, fertilization or conception. This is what occurs when a sperm enters the human egg or ovum, and this is the beginning of a new human organism. And it's important that I kind of phrase it like that, a new human organism, because sometimes you'll hear a person say, you'll talk about the humanity of the baby, you'll say, it's human, this is a living thing, it has human DNA, it's human. And if someone will say to you, well, a skin cell is a living thing that has human DNA as well. And, they'll try to assert that it's crazy for you to want to protect a baby from the moment of conception. It's like defending a skin cell. Well, the difference between a fertilized embryo and a skin cell is that an embryo is an organism. It's a completely distinct and whole creature, as opposed to a skin cell, which is just part of a creature. And you can look up, on Wikipedia, the definition of an organism, and you can back it up and say, no, this is what an organism is, and this is the difference between an embryo and a skin cell. And if you've never heard that before, it's only a matter of time before someone will use that argument on you. So remember that. It's a new human organism, a complete new human being. And cell division begins that day. After 4 weeks after conception, that's when the heartbeat begins. So you can see there on our little buddy there, that red blob there, that's his heart. That's about the size of his entire chest area at that point, and that's beating away at 4 weeks after conception. At 7 weeks after conception, you can see limb movement. So the fellow starts moving on his own in the womb, starts swimming around in there. 12 weeks after conception, remember this one, the baby will actually swim away from poking felt on the belly. So the baby will actually react to various stimuli that you give the baby. Okay? And remember that in a little while, because that's important. After 15 weeks, you can actually watch the baby taking practice breaths. You wonder to yourself, well, how does a baby come out of the womb knowing how to breathe? The reality is, after 15 weeks after conception, the baby is actually practicing those muscles, breathing the amniotic fluid. Not really getting oxygen from it, because the oxygen comes from the umbilical cord, but the baby is practicing all these things while in the womb. So that's what you can see after 15 weeks. And also after 15 weeks, there are certain invasive surgeries known as amniocentesis and some other ones, where they will actually put a needle into the womb to get like a blood sample or something else done to the baby. And at that point in the pregnancy, what can actually happen is the baby will actually grab the needle, and they'll actually have to wriggle the needle out of the baby's hand as they're withdrawing it. And that's there's videos on YouTube of that happening. Oh, and I should note, at the bottom right hand of the screen, you can see that's WebMD. Along the way here, you're going to see that the citations there at the bottom, and I'll tell you how to get the rest of the citations after at the end of the presentation. And after 18 weeks, the baby can actually hear what's going on outside the womb. So you'll see people like put headphones and stuff on the baby's womb. They'll play Mozart to the baby. They'll start telling the father start talking to the womb to get the baby used to his voice. After 18 weeks, the baby starts hearing what's going on inside the mother, and the baby can hear the mother. And that's why coming out of the womb, the baby already knows the mother's voice. It's very soothing to the baby to hear the mother's voice. I oftentimes like to ask people, what is the first sound that Jesus Christ heard with human ears? And the answer is the sound of Mary's heartbeat. So, a little something to chew on there. All right, so we're going to hand this over to Jess.
All right, so that was the happy, fuzzy part of the presentation. And the rest of the presentation
Less happy, fuzzy.
Less happy and fuzzy, exactly. But abortion, we know, as we've talked about many, many times, abortion is murder, and murder is not a happy and fuzzy subject. So, we talked about abortion is a direct and intentional killing of a living human being prior to his or her birth. And there's many different ways that they do these killings, and one of them is called suction aspiration, and the surgeon basically uses a vacuum with a sharp end to dismember, so tear apart the baby and remove it from the mother's womb. The dangerous part, well, there's lots of dangerous parts, but one of the most dangerous part is there's a sharp end on it, so it's not only getting the little baby out, but it can poke a hole in the mother's uterus, and that's super dangerous because there can be a lot of bleeding and eventually death. And another common form of abortion is dilation in, how do you say that word? I was trying to say which word. Heritage? Words are hard. And so a surgeon uses a loop-shaped knife to cut apart the baby and remove the baby. So after these are done, what the surgeons have to do is they have to take all the parts of the baby and they have to put the baby basically back together, like on a table, to make sure all the parts of the baby are out, so it doesn't cause an infection or anything inside the mother.
Nobody of you knows who Abby Johnson is? She was a Planned Parenthood clinic runner. She was the president of a Planned Parenthood clinic in Texas, and her job was to do this. And she did this for years, reassembling the baby after the abortion. And people ask her today, because she had a dramatic conversion, now she's pro-life and she's a pro-life leader, they ask her, how did you get through that time without realizing what you were doing? And she just says that it was like a form of blindness, like she was under a cloud and she just couldn't realize what she was doing. It's the honest thing hearing her talking about that.
All right, another form is a chemical abortion, otherwise known as RU486. And this chemically induces a period during the first 2 months of pregnancy. So basically a woman will go into the clinic and take one pill that blocks the progesterone, which is really important during a pregnancy, and then, which will, I think it, like the uterus, it detaches the baby from the uterus, and then afterwards they'll go home and take a second pill which will cause contractions, and this and then expels the baby from the uterus. And so this is done alone and at home, and it can cause serious bleeding, and not to mention that when you're left, you'll have this little itty-bitty baby, and you'll have to figure out like what to do with the little itty-bitty dead baby, which is probably going to be in your toilet. So, some more facts about abortion. How many? According to a 2011 study, there's 1.1 million abortions per year in the U.S. And that's about the entire population of Marion County, Indiana. And Planned Parenthood does about between 300 and 400,000 of these abortions. And since 1973, there have been 57 million and counting abortions in the U.S. Okay, so the age of the victims. So we have a nice little pie graph, and this shows the percentage of the baby when they were aborted. So 33% is, if you look at the chart where it says percentage, 33% is between 0 and 7 weeks, 30% is 7 to 8 weeks, 26%, 9 to 12 weeks, Once you get to 13 to 15 weeks, it kind of goes down because the baby gets bigger. And so 6%, 16 to 20 weeks is 4%, and 21 or more weeks is about 1%. So the next line on this graph, or this table, says percentage at or older. So babies that are 0 weeks or older when they are aborted, that's 100% of babies that have been aborted, or 100% are that age and older. So babies that are 7 to 8 weeks or older, they're 67% are at that age, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? Okay. And so, when you're coming across pro-choice, people who they might say the percentage of abortions which take place when the baby is cute and can feel pain are very small. Basically, there's two problems with this. They're using an opinion, because cute is an opinion. So I can say that a baby at 1 week is super cute, and that's just their opinion. But there's a scientific way that we can know that the kids feel pain. But another thing is, a small percent of a large number is still a large number. And so a number killed each year who can react to the stimuli is, I'm reading the numbers wrong. So 121,000. And that's 14 times the annual firearms rate in the United States.
Right. I'm going to jump in there real quick. I mentioned before to remember the 12 weeks after conception or older, right? That's when the baby is cognizant of what's going on in the womb, will swim away from pokes in the belly and stuff like that. So what we did was we took that at or older statistic, so basically 12 weeks or older. You take that percentage and apply that to the total amount of abortions in America per year, and you get 121,000. Okay, so if a person ever says to you, "No, it's not that many that are done when the baby can feel pain or the baby is aware of what's going on," not so much. 121,000 is a lot of people. And if you ask the person, "Are you concerned about gun crime in America?" Well, of course I am. All right, well, multiply that times 14, and you get the amount of babies that are killed in this condition. And I mentioned that the baby will swim away from the poking of the belly. The baby can grab the needle. Well, the baby's just as aware of what's going on during the abortion as well. So that's pretty grim stuff. But that was the kind of thing that converted Abby Johnson, was because she saw an ultrasound abortion and she saw the baby trying to get away from the surgical equipment that was tearing it apart. That's the kind of stuff that goes on in an abortion. That's the reality of it. So it's kind of grim, but that's what it is.
All right, there are quite a few reasons why people have abortions, and so some of them are they're not ready to parent, economic reasons, they don't want more kids, relationship problems, career issues, health issues, peer pressure, or rape. But the important thing is hard cases, which are rape and health, they make up less than 5% of all abortions. But the other ones, which are deemed lifestyle cases, they make up 86% of abortions. So basically 86% say, I don't want a baby right now. And 900,000 babies will die annually because it's just inconvenient to have them.
Alright, so now's the part where we get to the thing that I initially didn't want to do, but then Dina convinced me that we have to do it. So this is the part where we show you pictures of victims of abortion. Why do we do this? Well, all along we can talk about numbers. I think it was Joseph Stalin who said that one death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic. Because you don't have to think, when it gets to that high, you don't think about the individuals anymore. And so I made a trick question on the first discussion that was on the first time we did this. I said, if someone you knew was contemplating an abortion, would you tell anybody? And a lot of people will hear that question and say, well, no, that's a private thing. I don't want to embarrass anyone. I don't want to expose the person to shame. No, I wouldn't tell anyone if someone was considering abortion. The second question is, if someone was seriously considering killing their younger brother, would you tell anyone? Well, of course, because the brother's a person. And then you think to yourself, oh wait, I might believe that the child is a real person up here in my head, but if I realized it in my heart. So the reason why we show you these images is not to condemn anybody, not to judge anybody, but to help you realize that real lives are cut short by abortion. People who could have been your friends. So when you see these, and you don't have to see them, you can close your eyes. I've done that in the past. When you see these, remember who these people could have been, the friendships they could have had. Because each one of these, if we say 1.1 million abortions a year, each one of those is a real life that could have happened, that could have bloomed, that could have blossomed. A person who had dignity. Right, that's why we show you these images. So we're going to do that now in 3, 2, 1. Alright, so what you're seeing there is sort of like the body parts that are pulled apart by the Cutteridge technique. Those are little arms of a child who would have been about 5 weeks after conception. That is a child who would have been about 9 weeks after conception, born whole. And there you're looking at a child who would have been about 14 weeks or so after conception, too. So that is the face of what abortion does to real human beings. So, done. All right, we're done with that. So Jess, this is another one of your parts.
All right, so as we just saw, the baby is one of the victims of abortion, but with every abortion, there is at least 3 people who is affected by the abortion. There's the baby, the mother, and the father. And that's not even saying like the mother and father have parents and siblings. It just goes on and on. But some problems with abortion for the mother are future infertility. Having lots of abortions, or even just one, can increase the chance of never having children in the future. And having an abortion weakens the cervix and can cause tissue to scar. And that you don't want that when you're having a baby. And there's also, and that's just one side effect of having an abortion. And there are multiple, many other physical side effects of having an abortion. A lot of people have actually died from, the mother have actually died from abortion. But there's also psychological reasons. Depression and regret are a lot of them, and some women experience so much regret after an abortion, and suicide rate of people who had abortion is higher than if you have not had abortion. And there's also a link between having an abortion and breast cancer. If you had an abortion, I heard a sound. I get distracted easily. If you had an abortion, you risk increases by 50% to have breast cancer. And it's related to how growing cells in the breast react to sudden termination of pregnancy. And legal facts.
Okay. Back to some of my boring stuff. So now we're going to talk about some of the legal facts behind abortion. So the court case that everyone knows about is Roe versus Wade. This was in 1973. Determined that the right to privacy, which was discovered in the Constitution in a previous court case, extended or implied that the Constitution also respected the right to an abortion. None of which you will actually find in the Constitution if you read it. But this eliminated the possibility nationwide of restricting abortion in the first and second trimester, and it did allow for restrictions to occur in the third trimester. But later that day, one that people have heard less about is Doe versus Bolton, which established that you couldn't restrict abortion at any point during pregnancy as long as there were health issues. And health issues include physical, emotional, psychological, familial, or related to the woman's age. So basically anything. It can be, a health issue could be loss of sleep or cramps. That's the kind of health issues which could justify abortion, which means that abortion is really legal for all 9 months of pregnancy in the United States. People don't realize that a lot of times, but it truly is legal for all 9 months for any reason. That puts us in a very...
a fun fact about the woman in Roe versus Wade. She actually didn't have an abortion, and she ended up having her baby, and she speaks out against abortion and pro-life.
So the fact that we allow abortion in all 9 months of pregnancy puts us in a very fun club. There are 7 countries in the world that actually allow that. Those include Canada, China, the Netherlands, North Korea, Singapore, and Vietnam. So there's only 7 other nations in the world. So we tend to think of America as being a bit more conservative, maybe a little bit more pro-life or something like that. And maybe we'll think of, European countries as being a little more, allowing in this sort of area. It's actually not the truth. America, the United States of America, joins a few other nations in being the most lax in this area. So sometimes people will say to you, well, Roe versus Wade is the law of the land. Pro-lifers just need to learn to accept that. It's not going away. It's done. I had a person say that to me. And the way I like to respond to that is by pointing them to some other cases. Dred Scott versus Stanford. Does anyone know what the Dred Scott decision was? That was the one where a slave sued for his freedom, and then the Supreme Court basically said, what's this toaster doing suing his master? Was basically their opinion. They just said, you are property. You have no standing in court. And in fact, slavery is legal everywhere. That was the Dred Scott decision. That was back in 1857. So sometimes I'll ask people, say the year was 1858. People were pro-choice. I'll ask them, say the year was 1858, and the Dred Scott decision just came out. Would you be against the Dred Scott decision? Would you seek the repeal of the Dred Scott decision? And they're like, oh, of course I would. To settle law of the land. But I would want that to be repealed in an instant if it's going to violate human dignity and say people aren't really people. Well, that's, people were just as blind back then, right? That was an opinion held by nobody. People say that, it's an extremist position to believe that life begins at conception and it should be protected all throughout natural life. They call that an extreme position. Well, extreme just means a lot of people disagree with you. But if you were in 1858 and you believed that slavery should be abolished everywhere and that you should be treated equally regardless of the color of your skin, people would call you an extremist. That was a position held by basically the most pious of Catholic bishops and no one else. Okay? So I confront people with that and ask them, all right, well, was that the settled law of the land? Well, how about this one? Plessy versus Ferguson. 1896, the U.S. Supreme Court decision. The U.S. Supreme Court is just a lovely fountain of good ideas. It upheld segregation in the United States and established the separate but equal principle in America. And you can see that's the result of it. They had a white fountain and a black fountain, and they had white schools and black schools, and you know which ones were superior to the other ones because the white ones got all the money. But they justified it saying, well, they're separate but equal. And it wasn't until 1954 that was finally struck down. So think about all the time that passed from that decision to when finally people were able to get rid of it. So when someone says to you it's a law of the land, give up. It's absolutely not the case. Right? All it takes is for enough people to realize the truth, and we can finally, get the laws to reflect the reality of human dignity again. All right, so let's talk about the effectiveness of laws. This is another area of disagreement, because you might hear people say, well, outlawing abortion would not help it would not completely end abortions. Women would still get abortions illegally, so we need to just keep it legal. That's an argument I've heard quite a lot. They say, well, it wouldn't completely eliminate abortions. They'd still get it legally either way, so what's the point of making it legal? Well, think about that for a second. Can you name any other law which completely eliminates the thing in question? So, murder. That's illegal. No more murders in America. Oh, wait. Tax fraud, rape, robbery, drunk driving, all those things are illegal. But people still do them anyways, right? So I like to ask the person, okay, so you think that we should keep abortion illegal because people will just do it illegally anyways. Do you think the same about drunk driving? And they're like, well, no. Wait, that doesn't make sense. Why am I saying this? Well, no one proposes that we repeal those laws, so why not? The answer is that laws are not about necessarily, wiping out in one fell swoop all the activity. Laws are about the way that the government upholds our rights by making it illegal to violate our rights. So if you own a car and I steal your car, I am violating your right to private property. Right? And so that's why it's illegal for me to steal your car. Sometimes people will say, well, banning abortion would make things super duper dangerous for women. We need to keep it legal so pregnancies will be safe for women. And a lot of times people will say that before abortion was legalized, there was tens of thousands or even millions of back alley abortions, which women were getting in side alleys and stuff like that, and women were just dying by the millions. Well, Bernard Nathanson, the guy I introduced you to in the first presentation, he was the co-founder of NARAL. He was the guy who was basically leading the charge to legalize abortion in America back in the 1970s. He was quoted in a 2008 interview saying this: "We claim there between 5 and 10,000 women a year died of botched abortions. The actual figure was closer to 200 to 300. And we also claim that there were 1 million illegal abortions a year in the United States. The actual number was close to 200,000. So we were guilty of a massive deception." In other words, they made those statistics up from whole cloth. They just asserted them. So and those statistics live on to the current day. You'll hear people say, tens of thousands, tens of millions. The real number was much, much lower. And what actually happened in those days was the way you would get an abortion was your family would know a doctor who would, I don't know what that was, but your family would know a doctor, and these abortions were happening in doctors' offices, just illegally. The other thing to keep in mind is that there are countries that have very strict abortion laws. Those include places like Ireland and Poland, very traditionally Catholic countries. And if you look at the maternal mortality rate in those countries, Ireland and Poland, have among the lowest rates of maternal mortality in the world. So Ireland is the 16th lowest in the world, Poland is the 10th lowest in the world. Those countries where abortion is nearly illegal or illegal in almost all cases are among the safest places in the world to be pregnant. You compare that to the United States, where abortion is illegal through all of pregnancy, we're the 37th. So if a person wants to say that abortion makes pregnancy safer, they have a problem, and they're called facts. So another person will say, if you want to really, this is a very fun one. Someone says, if you really want to reduce the number of abortions, what you really need to do is build a massive welfare system to reduce the need for abortion. That's a buzzword you need to remember. Reduce the need for abortion, or reduce the root causes of abortion. Now, this is not a lecture about, whether or not we should have a welfare, system, or how big it should be, or whatever. That's all besides the point. That's politics. I'm not interested in it. But the question is that true? Does building a massive welfare state reduce the need for abortion, therefore reduce abortion? Because this is how people justify voting for pro-abortion candidates when they know that they shouldn't. Right? They say, well, their other policies will reduce the need for abortion, therefore I can vote for this person who's rabidly pro-abortion, even though I'm supposedly pro-life. This is the justification. Well, if you look at the countries that already have those massive welfare states, sort of like the gold standard of that, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway are often held up as like the gold standard of massive welfare assistance. They have among the highest abortion rates in the world. Sweden, 3 live births per abortion. Denmark, almost 4 live births per abortion. Norway, 4 live births per abortion. They still abort their children at a massive rate. So why is that? Why is it that these people are still getting abortions when the government will supply all of their needs? Well, it's because of something very, very basic that no government is going to fix. The core reason why people want abortions is because kids are noisy, expensive, demanding, force massive changes in your life, and the adults want the problem to go away fast. That no government program is going to fix that. Okay? And if you imagine a country in which the government takes care of everything for you and makes everything super duper convenient, you're going to be trained to love convenience. And guess what kids are? Not convenient. That's the real driving force behind abortion, and no welfare system is ever going to fix that. Plus, there's already an alternative which makes abortion unnecessary, and it's called adoption. So, I know, crazy, right? There's already a system in place to make it so that no abortion needs to happen, and it's adoption. There are massive waiting lists of people waiting to adopt healthy kids. So, there's the rebuttal to a couple of arguments regarding the law. And we're going to get this back. Jess?
Alright, so the place that does most of abortions in America is the infamous place called Planned Parenthood. And it was founded in 1916 by Margaret Sanger, and originally it was called the American Birth Control League. And they, as I said, leading abortion provider in the United States, and they perform nearly a third of all abortions. A lot of people say, but we need Planned Parenthood, and abortion is only 3% of Planned Parenthood service. But let's use this analogy of Jiffy Lube. So this is a lot of stuff that Jiffy Lube does. The oil changes, air filter, AC, brakes, vacuum, blah, 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 blah. They do all that stuff. And they even put a little sticker in your car to tell you when to bring it back the next time, and so they can charge money. But saying that oil changing is only 7% of what Jiffy Lube does, see, they're barely in the oil change business at all. But let's be honest. Most people go to Jiffy Lube to get their oil changed. So no one with a shred of common sense would buy that logic. Yeah, that's Jesus' face, Tommy.
Do you guys see how that works? Like, what Planned Parenthood does is they take little accountings of all the various things that they do, down to the very last detail, and they count those all as like one service. And the abortion is just one more. And then you just divide by the total number of services to get that 3%. They're like, see, barely do any abortions at all. And the comparison there is basically, if you take all the same things that Jiffy Lube does and do the exact same math, you can prove that Jiffy Lube barely does oil changes at all. And the point is that it's silly. So I hope you guys see the logic behind that.
And yeah, so as Steve was saying, abortion is the core of Planned Parenthood's business. And if you ask former Planned Parenthood workers, that like Abby Johnson, they will confirm this. And they make a lot of money from abortions annually. $262 million is estimated, and that's 80% of the revenue.
Revenue from services.
From services.
Because they get donations and stuff too, so you gotta be careful with the numbers.
And if you watched in the news recently, or on Facebook, social media, there was the baby body part scandal, and there were undercover videos that revealed that Planned Parenthood donates organs for reimbursement. But basically they were selling the organs of babies and to make money. So basically a baby, they say a baby is just a blob of tissue until you can get money from it. Then the organs are the liver and the heart and the brain. Those are super important. Yes.
What would you do with, why would you want to buy that?
They do medical experiments on fetal tissues. A long while ago, there were vaccines which were made from the stem cells of aborted babies. I'm not completely sure all the research that they do, but these are sold to research companies to experiment on human organs. And the important bit is, it all comes down to whether or not you think that Planned Parenthood is trustworthy. Planned Parenthood came out and said, oh, well, this is all on the up and up, it's all legit, these are just reimbursements for costs that we have in donating these things. Shipping and storage, that's what they said. And people who are wanting to believe Planned Parenthood went, okay, it's all legit, nothing to see here, move along. But if you think that that Planned Parenthood is more like sort of like a crooked lobbyist, or someone who's cooking the books in their like law firm or something. In other words, if you don't trust them, you have good reason to be like, I think you're just kind of saying that to cover up the very obvious thing you're doing here. And I personally think that the smoking gun is that they would talk about how they would donate these organs for different amounts of money for different organs. So if it's all about storage and transportation, why is it that you charge more for a liver than for some intestines or something? So I think that's the best argument for proving that this was a transaction. But again, if a person doesn't want to believe that, you're not going to force them. So it's all about what people already think about Planned Parenthood.
Can I add something to that?
Yep.
I work with research companies all the time, and a reputable research company will not pay for donations from a reputable donation center. So for example, if you die and you donate your organs to research, there's no money exchanged. And just like Stephen said, when there's a sliding pay scale, that sets up a red flag.
Good to know. So another argument that you can use against Planned Parenthood donating for reimbursement. And then they also would change the abortion procedure to get specific organs. So if they really wanted the heart, they would just change the procedure to make sure the heart, or whatever, the brain, the liver, would stay intact. So, because it would make more money. And now we're going to conclude.
All right. So let's close this out. Pro-life discussions don't always have to get into all these nitty-gritty details. A lot of times, it's as simple as just saying, look, it's a baby. Everyone knows it's a baby. I've said that, to people who are very sternly pro-choice, I've said to them, come on. You know that we're talking about a baby here, don't you? Doesn't everyone know that? But sometimes you need to appeal to the evidence. And with these sorts of facts at your disposal, you'll be able to handle most all of the conversations you get in about abortion. You'll be able to back up your cases or complete your research papers or whatever it is. So it's important to have all these facts in your mind, to understand the logic behind the pro-life position. And I like to close with a little scripture verse always. The heart of him who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouth of the fool feeds on folly. And nothing points us out more than just reading the words of people who support abortion versus the words of people who are against it. And try to realize, who is really seeking after knowledge and who is really just trying to fill up their mouths with folly here. And so I hope that you guys have learned a lot from these past presentations. I hope you guys have learned things that you can use in the future. And we thank you guys very, very much.